There are three things in life everyone's chasing. They want to win Pokemon tournaments, they want to get bread, and they want to be able to clickbait YouTube thumbnails. Now, naturally, when I saw that Rose Tower was hosting another tournament, I found an opportunity to get all three in one if I were to win this tournament. So, I hit up my team dealer, Raghav. I said, hey Raghav, do you got any Spike Myth teams? But unfortunately, Raghav was busy with school, which, as we know, is not Pokemon, which isn't very cool, but it is what it is. Raghav's doing school, so I had to hit up my second dealer, JoeUX9. So I hit up Joe and I asked if he had any sauce, and of course Joe had the sauce, and Joe wanted to run the same team again. So naturally, I was down. I was so down. So the day of the tournament comes, and Joe actually woke up on time, which is amazing for Joe because Joe never wakes up on time. But this time, he was ready to go. So we started the tournament. I won the first two rounds pretty handily. But unfortunately, round 3, I played someone who Joe played and lost to. So at that point, Joe and I were both X-1, and we had both lost to the same person in the tournament. We never got our revenge. That player beat us, so it is what it is. But the team is still godlike. So after that, I won all my rounds, and in Top Cut, I was unfortunately either going to have to play Joe or Joe's opponent, Brady, which meant that I would either play Joe, which sucked because it's a 6-mon mirror, or I'd play Brady, who just beat Joe, which also sucked. But naturally, I'm an amazing player, so I prevailed. I beat Brady, and I move all the way up to top 4. I win top 4, I win finals, and I won another tournament with Joe's team. So I'm super excited that I was able to win another Spike Myth tournament. I'm 2 for 2 on the Spike Myth tours, and I won that sweet, sweet cash. I don't even know how much cash it is because they still haven't paid it out. So who's to say how much sweet cash I'll be getting, but I know there will be cash that I will be obtaining. So now let's go into the team and talk about the team I used to win this tournament. So now that we got the intro out of the way, let's talk about the team. I want to talk about P2 first, because Porygon 2 is incredibly broken in this format. A super strong Mon. One of my favorite parts of the team, I've been using Porygon since 2017. I'm a huge Porygon fan, and this team was no exception. I think Porygon fit this team exceptionally well, and it really carried some of my matches. So the moveset is pretty simple. Recover, so you live forever. Trick Room, so you get to move first. It also gives you this nice form of speed control, because this team doesn't really have any speed control outside of Trick Room. It relies on fake out pressure with their Shifu, or it relies on setting up Trick Room. So it is the only it is a rather bulky team, so some of the speed control doesn't matter. I don't need P2 every game, but Trick Room's still nice to have, okay? And then you have Bolt Beam coverage because it gives you flawless coverage. You can hit everything neutrally, and I think it allows Porygon to be sometimes a really big threat, especially with the download ability. So yeah, Porygon is a pretty simple Pokemon, but a very effective one at what it does. So the spread itself, I'm not really sure what the spread does. It's just very, very physically defensive. You can take close combats from Urshifu pretty comfortably. And as long as there's Intimidated, Banded won't kill you as well. It just allows Porygon to just set up clean endgames versus stuff like Rillaboom, Incin, or Urshifu, which is a pretty godlike core. I may be running it myself. So it makes complete sense that physical defense is more important right now. And so, yeah, Bold Porygon just goes super duper hard. So next up, we got Urshifu. Urshifu is a Pokemon that is incredibly strong, but I think it does require you to pilot it correctly, just because I think you can set up amazing end games, it can hard carry games, but you have to be really careful. When I first started using this team, I was horrible with it. I really piloted the fake out users like incorrectly, and I was trying to like set up fake out pins like in the end game where you're like, oh, I'm just gonna fake out and Surging Strikes everything to death, but I would just mess up a lot and it felt really clunky. But in the tournament, I used Urshifu more just as like a Trick Room sweeper a lot of the time. I found myself pressing Trick Room because this Urshifu is incredibly slow. If you haven't noticed the speed EVs, it's a very bulky Urshifu. That is why it runs Mystic Water as well. It does a lot of damage, all things considered. Surging Strikes, obviously, amazing move. Close Combat, your physical move, Aqua Jet for priority, and Protect. The moveset's pretty standard, and Mystic Water really carries this thing. It was super this Urshifu was super crucial in my success in this tournament. It was extremely bulky, especially, and it would catch my opponents off guard a lot of the time. Most people assume that Urshifu Scarf, and they'll do stupid plays to try and break the Scarf. They'll go for Fake Out onto it, they'll go for like an Aqua Jet from an enemy Urshifu to try and break the Scarf, or the Sash, and I found a lot of people making those kind of plays, and I found it really interesting because I was so bulky that those plays got super punished. Like, they accomplished nothing by hitting my Urshifu with that Aqua Jet. And throughout the run, many people tried to break this imaginary Sash that didn't exist, and then I would just live a Landorus Earth Power, which was incredible. living Landorus Earth Power is insane. Like, you wouldn't expect it to live that, but I found myself living it. I lived basically any special hit you could ever want to, and I was just doing mad damage back. I think this Urshifu is godlike, and the spread is insane. I think Joe is really, really smart for running such a bulky Urshifu. At first, when the format started, I know Rog and I talked about bulky special Urshifu, special defensive Urshifu, but it kind of fell off in favor of the Sash one, and we didn't see as many, and I think this set is super underappreciated. Obviously, the set is boring, but the spread is godlike, and huge shout out to Joe for creating this thing. Again, Joe created this team. I owe everything to Joe, but this Urshifu was incredible, and it helped me a lot throughout the run. So next up is Incineroar. Incineroar is nothing too special. It's a bulky Incineroar. Flare Blitz is your big damage. Parting Shot is great. Snarl helps with Hatterene and DD and is just useful in a lot of situations. And then Fake Out is Fake Out, right? Incineroar is pretty boring. Shucka Berries to live Landorus Earth Powers. It did help against Entei. I won a game because they pressed Stomping Tantrum into Shucka Berry, and if I wasn't Shucka Berry, I would have lost. So Shucka Berry was a great item. It helps you play into Landorus more effectively, and I think it makes Incin really good into, I don't want to say mirrors, but like very similar teams to mine. Incineroar is very good into because of the Shucka Berry. Again, it's just a super especially defensive Incineroar. Obviously, Incineroar has Intimidate, so you don't really need to invest as much into defense, and it just works. This Incineroar was incredibly effective, and it was just really good with Urshifu and sometimes with P2. P2 Incin was a great lead. If I wanted to set up Trick Room or just put a lot of pressure on my opponents, I loved Porygon plus either of the Fake Outers. I love Porygon, but Porygon plus the Fake Outers was a really, really strong lead, and Incin P2 is one of the most defensive leads you can probably have with this team, and it puts on so much pressure just because you're threatening Snarl, Parting Shot, and Trick Room all in one turn, and you can just Parting Shot turn one, set up Trick Room, bring in Sylveon, and start Calm Minding to victory. So it's a really, really important Pokemon. It's pretty boring. There's not much to say about Incineroar. I don't know. I've in all my team reviews, I always have an Incineroar, and I always say the same thing. He's super broken, super strong, and he helps everyone else on the team accomplish their goals. So next up is Boomer. Rillaboom is a really, really good Pokemon, and I really, really enjoyed using Rillaboom on this team. I think Rillaboom, Incin, or Urshifu is a pretty godlike core. You have Fire, Water, Grass. Fake Out plus Unseen Fist is incredibly broken. So they just make a ton of sense together, and I think that's where this team started, and it just is the backbone of the team. Like, whenever you you're not sure what to do, bring two Fake Outers and Urshifu, and you'll probably win the game. But this Rillaboom is really, really good. I was a big fan of the Assault Vest. It lived basically any hit I ever wanted to. It would live Nihilego hits, Landorus hits. It was just super, super potent, and it was super important to, I think, the way the team functions. These three Pokemon are all very bulky together, and I mean, so is Porygon, and it just creates this very, very defensive team. You have a ton of switching options. You have Grassy Terrain, which I think is incredible on this team. Grassy Terrain is a great ability, but I think this team really utilized it to like better than any other Grassy Terrain team I've used before. Because obviously Rillaboom's been around for a while, but I don't think the teams really use like Grassy Terrain as well as this one. I have leftover Sylveon. Incineroar loves Grassy Terrain, so does Porygon too. And this bulkier Urshifu loves the terrain as well. So I think Grassy Terrain, I always wanted it up, and it was always benefiting me much more than my opponent. So I think Grassy Terrain is a huge part of this team and a huge part of the win cons. The set is pretty simple. Fake Out to Fake Out. U-turn to switch. Drum Beating to slow them down. And then Grassy Glide for just big damage, right? I talked to Joe after the tournament, and we both agreed that Wood Hammer probably would have been better over Drum Beating, just because this team was very, it's very defensive, and sometimes you just want that nuke button to, like, especially one-shot Feeny, because Drum Beating, while it gives you a little bit extra damage with base 80, it's not as effective as something like Wood Hammer would be. So I think if you're going to use this team, Wood Hammer is probably your go-to move. But I think overall Rillaboom accomplished everything it needed to, and it was an exceptional partner to both Porygon and Sylveon especially. It allowed me to win so many games because I was recovering HP. It was a fantastic mon. I think this team really just abuses Grassy Terrain, and Rillaboom was stellar. So next up is Sylveon. I think Sylveon is also a really incredible Pokemon, and something that was a little slept on. When I got the team from Joe, I was instantly super duper excited about Sylveon, and I was really looking forward to using it. I hadn't used Sylveon in a long time, since about 2015. In tournament, so I was excited to use Sylv, and it really didn't let me down. The whole time I was just setting up Calm Minds, spamming Hyper Voice. Mystical Fire is nice, but it didn't really come up. Spamming Hyper Voice and then just recovering HP with lefties and grassy terrain. This Sylveon was unkillable. It was MVP in plenty of my games, and it single-handedly beats opponents when it really shouldn't. I found some matchups where it's just like I just spam Calm Mind and then they can't kill Sylveon that way, and as long as I have Incineroar alive with Intimidate, I'm just winning the game. I'm just faking out, I'm lowering their attack, which is Sylveon's main weakness, and it's just doing incredible things for my team. Huge fan of Sylveon, and the spread is absolutely perfect. It's very, very defensive in nature, and Sylveon has very high special defense stats, so this spread makes up for that by giving as much of defense as possible. This isn't really a sweeper. I mean, it is a sweeper, but it's not really something that you just bring in and spam Hyper Voice. You usually have to set it up a little bit with Calm Mind, but usually after one Calm Mind, you're good to go, and you're starting to sweep, and you're not dying due to the leftovers. So it just really, really popped off throughout the tournament. I had so much fun using Sylveon. Again, Sylveon in Trick Room is one of my favorite things to do. I think it's really difficult to play against, but even outside of Trick Room, Sylveon was a huge opponent, a huge problem for my opponents. It gathered, like, there was a lot of mental follow me's with Sylveon, just because if I Calm Minded, it was very difficult to deal with for certain opponents. So it created a lot of pressure whenever it was on the field, and even if it got really, really low, you could easily get it back to healthy with grassy terrain plus leftovers and protect spam. So I found Sylveon to just be a great pivot as well, just because of the leftovers. Like, this whole team is just so bulky outside of one Pokemon, which is Landorus, but everything is so bulky, and Sylveon just plays to how the team wants to function, and it was just stellar. I loved using Sylveon. I do think P2 is probably the best Pokemon, felt the best, but Sylveon was exceptional throughout the run. And then finally, Landorus. This one's super simple. It's max special attack, max speed. This is like the go button. When you want to deal big damage and put pressure on your opponents, you just lead Landorus. And Landorus was stellar throughout the run. Earth Power is insane. Sludge Bomb is wild. It's so good into the Rillaboom, Incineroar, Shifu core. It puts pressure on all of them. It does big damage to them. Basically, Landorus felt like it could be brought to any battle, and it was exceptional in best of 3. I found myself adjusting a lot and bringing Landorus in later games because my opponent wasn't respecting it as much as they should, and then I would just spam Earth Power and throw a Sludge Bomb in there, and I would just win the game instantaneously. So I felt Landorus was super, super valuable to the team, although it was probably my least used Pokemon. I think the other mons just synergized much, much better, but then Landorus is just there to do big freaking damage, honestly. I really enjoyed using this team. It was very different from the last team you saw on my channel. The Lilycole team was really, really aggressive and very brain dead, while this one really required me to be an actual human being and a player, and I had to interact with my opponents and play the game. The other team was very much about setting up Trick Room, winning in 1 to 3 turns. This team was literally just very reactionary, very slow paced, heavy switching, heavy pivoting, and it was just real Pokemon. And I do think I like this team more. It was more fun to play and to pilot, but I had a great time with both teams regardless, and I'm super happy to have won 2 Spike Myths in a row. Huge shout outs to Joe for hooking me up with these teams. Like, I seriously wouldn't have, I don't think I could have won without them. They were just pure gas, and I'm really happy Joe was able to top cut this time. I'm glad I didn't have to play him low key, but I'm happy that we actually both were able to top cut with this team, because this team is exceptional, and I think it's a really fun team to feature and to show off because it was a blast. I think Spike Myth is still a godlike format, and I still want to upload as much Spike Myth as I can before Scarlet and Violet, but unfortunately there's just not a lot of tournaments at the moment. But if there are more, I'll definitely enter them and show off more spice and more what I'm capable of playing this format. I wish this was an official format. I wish we got to play this in tournament because I'm just having too much fun with it. I know some people don't really like it, but I've loved Spike Myth. But anyways, that's the team. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. These 6 are just a really fun team and a really effective team, and it allows you to play Pokemon, and that's all you can really ask for. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, all of Joe's stuff is down below. Joe is a god for giving this team. Thank you so much, Joe. And also, if you like the content, please like, comment, subscribe. I post 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. So I hope you guys have a great day. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.